Alright, so we're going to talk about the apocalypse, and you wrote something recently which I was fascinated by, and that is that the apocalypse seems to be structured, I don't know, you'll correct my words if they're not accurate, but it seems to be structured by angelic communication.
Yes. Well,
I just thought we could look at the apocalypse in that light, angelic communications. But we need to first of all look at the different types of angels that are going to play a role in that.
Yeah.
I think people don't know, certainly I'm not completely familiar with it, but I think we don't know a lot about the different orders of angels, what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was amazed to read in what you were writing and talking about how clear it is actually what the different orders of angels are and what their functions are, what they do, how they communicate, what they communicate, what they were made for, what their nature is. So
well,
talk about that?
Yeah. Well, it depends a little bit on who's listening, because for some people, angels are part of their faith, and they believe in angels. They pray to angels to help them. They ask them for things. You know, there's a devotional aspect of the angels. For other people, let's say the other extremist people that don't even believe that realities without matter can exist. So they will deny the human soul, and they obviously will also deny that there are spirits that have no body but still that exist and that live and live, if you like, their own life in their own light. So well, between the two extremes we have to reflect on the angels. What are they? And as you may know, in the tradition of Christianity, of monotheistic Judaism and Christian faith, there are spirits that are like our soul, but without a body, and therefore their way of knowing is very different. We call them angels, which means they are sent by God, which puts the emphasis on the fact that they have a special task in helping us, of which we are not much aware in our lives. According to the wisdom of God, we should not communicate directly with these spirits unless God, in very special circumstances, wants it. But for most of the time, the angels are like part of our universe, of our world, in a way that is difficult for us to understand.
Just before we go into further about the theology of angels, is it philosophically, so humanly speaking, possible to speak about spirits that are not of this world, that are not such as we are? Yes,
it is. Because Aristotle has tried already to do that in his metaphysics. He really asks what is immaterial in us, human beings, who are body and soul. He wonders about what is immaterial in us. Mm-hmm. Therefore, what can exist after death, and also what could exist without any body at all. Mm-hmm. And he calls that separate substances.
Oh, so he's basically talking about angels with that?
Well, yes, he is giving the metaphysical basis on which we can, if you like, reflect on the angels appearing in the Bible. You see? But of course, the most important intermediary in reflecting about these things in an intelligent way is, do we as human beings have something that is not that is maybe connected with matter, but which is not how do you say that, matter is not an absolute condition for it to exist? Is there something essentially immaterial in us, although it is capable of being connected with matter? And that's in fact the soul. We have to reflect on the immaterial soul. And as a conclusion, when we discover that we have an immaterial soul, we can also think about our existence after death, and we can reflect on, if you like, spirits that essentially have no body and that, according to their own nature, are not connected with a body or with matter at all.
So, if you were to take what Aristotle says, then you could say that the human spirit, the human soul, is a sign that there could exist or that there must exist.
No, there could exist.
That there could exist.
Yeah, yeah.
Spirits outside of the physical.
Yeah, yeah. And then sort of the Bible and the Revelation confirm that there actually are. And then the Church Fathers, who sort of combine, let's say, the Greek science, which includes metaphysics, and therefore it is the real universal science. The Church Fathers, they start reflecting on what Greek philosophy has taught them and what the Revelation teaches them. So they come up with a kind of relationship of the angels with matter, which is not part of their nature, but of their, if you like, their assignment which God has given to them. So although they don't need matter, they have nothing to do with it naturally, according to their angelic nature, but in God's wisdom, they do have a certain task in the material world. And that's what the Church Fathers reflected on when thinking about the bad angels. Why did the spirits decide to be against God's wisdom and try to hinder his works of wisdom in matter, in humanity? But also, how are these angels that are acting on God's behalf in a hidden, mysterious way, how are they ordered? Because we have different angelic orders according to the Bible. We have the seraphim and we have the cherubim. You know, that's two biblical angelic names, and then Saint Paul comes up with other names like the powers and the forces, the principalities, the archangels, you know,
the lordships, the thrones. So these different tasks, like, you know, the breakdown of the different types, for want of a better word maybe, of angel that we see in the Bible and in the Church Fathers, is this purely according to their function? Like, in other words, I guess, like, you know, a seraphim or a cherubim, we'll get into all this, but I mean,
yeah.
if they seem to be the most angelic in the philosophical sense of the word, because they're contemplating, right?
Yes.
But then when you get down to all the way down to the regular angels, what we call guardian angels, all we know about them is that they're helping material or partly material beings.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what would they be without this task, or do they only exist because of the task?
Well, yeah. There's one very funny or strange, mysterious thing about angels, that is every angel is unique as a species. So the angels are like a museum where of every bird, of every plant, you have one specimen. They don't multiply, they don't procreate, and they have no matter to put them into one community. So each angel is a species in itself, and its way of understanding and seeing and comprehending reality and truths is also very different from ours. You know, we relate things and we form a logos in us, we form a concept, and we can communicate about that with each other. Angels, in a way, don't have to learn. They were created with concepts, which are part of their intelligence in a completely different way as with us. They have not acquired them, they were born with them, they were created with them. And according to these concepts, they're different from each other, and also they form a species on their own. It's very, very odd.
So basically their existence or their nature is determined by what they can see.
What they are meant to see, because they did not see God from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So they all had to to allow God to reveal himself and agree with the fact that they could not see God by themselves. But they all had also concepts, ideas, if you like, about God's wisdom and the material universe. So they could sort of, this is what the church fathers talk about, and I'm not saying they're all coming to the same conclusions, but the angels, so these pure spirits, they did not have any connection with matter according to their own nature, according to their own species, but they did get like a surplus, like a bonus. They got an assignment to the material universe according to the ideas that they were created with.
Mm. Let's just rewind a bit to the thing you were saying about species, why they each have their own species, so to speak. Why is that? Because I can imagine, they don't have a physical existence, so they don't procreate, but why is that a reason for them not to have a common nature? They could have a common nature and yet not be reproducing, couldn't they?
Yeah, but because being a spirit itself, you could almost say it's too radical to have any common species amongst you. It's very odd. So there is something unique about every angel, but it's so radically in its existence and being a spirit that as a spirit they're immediately created for God. That's what characterizes them. So in that aspect there's no difference between them. If there is a difference between them, is that they form an entity on themselves, for themselves, only connected as far as their finality and their purpose is concerned, fixed on God. Their only purpose is God. So in a certain way they have that as a common species, if you like. But then that's because they're created spirits. And the fact of being created is not specific. It's universal, but it's not specific. So when you look for the species of an angel, you're sort of lost, because we in our nature we understand the species because looking at animals and plants we become more precise. Everything moving is an animal and procreating, and everything not moving and not moving but procreating is a plant, if you like. Mm-hmm. Everything not procreating, not feeding itself is inanimated, it's not alive. But then you get living things and you start specifying. Things are moving, either on the land, others in the air, others in the sea. So here we have animals, fish and birds. And then not all birds are the same. Some float on water, some fly only in the air and will drown if they land on water. So you have the sea birds, the lake birds and the flying birds, and you specify. So specify. The species is always the ultimate precision of something you see in matter. Mm-hmm. And then of course man is, in all the living material animal world, it is the most precise being, because we have reason and we can reflect on existence, on our own existence, on the existence of the world. And that's why we are, if you like, the most specific species in the world. Mm-hmm. But this specification is always according to something general in matter that through characteristics becomes specific. And of course the most specific characteristic of the human being is the spirit. He has something immaterial in him. So species is always something that is the result of a precision. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the angels there's nothing to start with. They're created and they're there.
Okay, so they do have similarities. They have things which are in common in the sense that they're the same. For example, they have intelligence, but they don't have a common general foundation.
No.
Makes sense.
Only in their finality. Mm-hmm. And that's the amazing thing, is that it has been discussed before by the church fathers, but that might, or probably has been, because it's part of tradition, so you could say we believe it is, that there is a temptation of one of the angels with a minority of the angels, it must be stressed it is a minority, that thought that God should not have made man his favorite creature, because they are more intelligent than us. How could God have the idea that they must serve us? Mm-hmm. So the angels have agreed with God to administer, to serve mankind, but some have protested, and they became the enemies of man. They cannot be the enemies of God, but they can become the enemies of man, and that's the demons.
So what is this choice of God? I guess maybe you could say the wisdom of God, choosing this pathway that the angels would serve inferior beings, humans. Why was this? What is that? If you compare it to the intelligence of the angels, which that would be like almost intellectually speaking, I guess, a humiliation for the angels, right? To have to serve inferior beings. But why was God doing that?
It's very mysterious, but I think it has to do with the mystery of the filioque, because you know.
Just explain what filioque is.
Well, filioque, yeah, sorry, it's the dogma, which is, I call it the Catholic trademark. It's specifically Catholic, although the Greeks sort of agreed upon the dogma in 1493, but they didn't get much chance to sort of deepen this mystery in their own church life, in their own spiritual life. But the filioque says that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the oneness of Father and Son. Father and Son, I mean the Father generates in eternity the Son proceeds from the Son, but then there is also between the two divine persons there is this very mysterious oneness which is eternal, in which they are one principle in breathing, if you like, the Holy Spirit, in inspiring, in breathing the Holy Spirit. Now, that means that when there are creatures that are made to see God, the spirits, I mean, like God, they are spirit, they are created to see God, and they need God's own light to see God. They are very much like God, because God, in a certain way, in seeing himself, he generates the Son. But this oneness of Father and Son, it can only be sort of a perfect image of that can only be realized with matter, because only in matter you can form one species of different individuals that become one.
So wait, say that again.
Only in matter.
Only in matter can
you can have one species of spirits that are made to see God, but you need matter to unite in such a way that it reflects this mystery of the eternal filioque, which is very closely connected to the glory of God. Father and Son are one in breathing the Holy Spirit. And in order to make a creature that not only is a spirit made to see God, but also a creature that implies matter, so that it become one and be united to God in the way that Father and Son in eternity are united. He needs the cosmos, he needs the universe, and he needs the free will of man, who starting from nothing actually, starts returning to God.
Mm-hmm. So, like angels, would they be like? Would it make? I mean, if there weren't the Trinity, if it were just the Father, then the angels would be enough, I guess. Because it would just be a question of contemplating the source of all light, and it wouldn't be a question of this union of Father and Son.
Well, there cannot be only a Father, because he's only a Father because he's got a Son.
Yeah.
You know, if you would have a sterile God, who is not a Trinity but just a monad, yeah, then I mean, there's no reason to create anything at all.
But I mean, the angels, are they in some way a reflection of the Father?
I wouldn't say that. No. I would say they are more like a certain reflection of the Logos, of the Son. But in a very incomplete way, because they can see God, but they cannot answer to God. So, whereas a word asks to be answered. You can, in the Dutch language, it's very clear, woord and antwoord. And I think the Old English word answer actually also is from the anti-word, which is not against the word, but is in answer to the word, in exchange for the word. So, it's all the Trinitarian God in man. He becomes both an image and a similarity. You know, and I think this is what it refers to, the image. And the image is always proceeding from something. So the image, man as an image, it can be restored through the inner image of God, which is the Son, which is the Word, becoming flesh, and then the similarity, the original likeness that God has wanted for man, it is realized bit by bit by our answer to the Word becoming flesh.
Okay.
And that's why the Church says that the answer must also become flesh. That's our good works. You know, I just cannot understand why for a lot of people faith is enough and works don't count. And what do you do with the apocalypse? We will see that, we are judged according to our works, which means we are judged according to the incarnation of our answer to the Word that incarnated Himself.
So the angels, they make this, or they have the opportunity, or maybe the vocation, to make this choice to be at the service of that.
Yeah.
Of the answer that humans would give to this revelation of the Word.
Yeah.
And they do that in different ways, if I understood what you said before and what you wrote. So let's just go through that. Where do you want to start, with the highest or the lowest orders of angels, the seraphim? Well,
let's first of all, what we're speaking about here is not a private revelation, because I've never seen angels. It is the fruit of a genius, which unfortunately is not me, because there's two geniuses that were before me and that were genius enough.
Only two.
Only two. Who talked about the angels.
Okay.
No, that's the thing, is that there's this St. Thomas of Aquinas, who actually put order in the angelic sort of vision or intuitions or mysticism of a guy whose name we even don't know. He's called Dionysius, the Pseudo-Areopagite, the Pseudo-Dionysius. What do you call him in English?
We used to call him in theology formation, we used to call him fake Dennis.
Okay, the fake Dennis. Yeah, because he uses he uses his non-real name, and we don't even know exactly his identity. Now, what is very interesting is that when you look at the tradition of the Old Testament, there's always talking about the 7 angels before God. Now, there is something in interpreting the writing that one angel can be his whole order, his whole army, because it's not about species, it's about their assignment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the angel for us is characterized by his task.
Mm-hmm.
So, because they are like an army, when you say, I've seen an archangel, or for example, somewhere a seraphim appears, it can also mean all the seraphim.
Mm-hmm.
So, fake Dennis, he steps actually a bit outside or beyond the tradition of the 7 orders of angels. The 7 angels before God, they appear in the Old Testament. Then the step is made through metaphysics, through reflecting, through prayers, through meditation, that there is 7 orders before God. But actually, fake Dennis concludes that the highest of them, the thrones, they have a kind of subset. Within the thrones, there is an elite that has even more perfection on the level of science, knowledge, and they're called the cherubim, the cherubs. And within the cherubs, there is yet another elite of those who are, if you like, specialized or who excel in their knowledge of love, of charity. And they're called the seraphs or the seraphim. So, in a way, there is 7 angelic orders, of which the highest is the thrones. And in another way, you could say there's 9 of them, of which the highest is the seraphim. Now that is something important to remember when I'm going to explain how I come up with this idea, which is really an engineer's idea, because it's just cutting up the apocalypse in pieces. It's like taking an engine apart, you know. So that's the first step we make. So, and then St. Thomas actually applies very rigid, which means very clear, not rigid, but very clear and concise metaphysics to fake Dennis, and comes up with an extremely clear theology of the angels. And that's, I think, all you need. And there's no devotion here. Mm-hmm. There's no little baby angels with wings glued on your ceiling like in Baroque churches. There's no nice pictures or paintings above your bed of that children can sleep under. That's all devotional, and it's very beautiful. I am nothing against it. Like in the Orthodox icons, the angels are always depicted as soldiers, as fighters. All of that is true, but it's devotional. If you study if you read what fake Dennis and St. Thomas have written, I think it's sufficient to cut up the apocalypse in pieces, to dissect the apocalypse, and then start reflecting on what those pieces mean in the light of a certain order of angels. That's basically what I've done.
Okay, great. Should we go ahead and begin with that?
Let's do it next time.
Okay.